The billionaire class has been on the offensive against workers and oppressed people for over 30 years. These parasites have been able to overthrow the Soviet Union in 1991, a terrible defeat for every poor person on this planet. This political reaction has included a fantastic drop in the number of strikes in the United States. In 1974, there were 424 strikes involving at least 1,000 workers. 35 years later, in 2009, there were just 5 of these strikes in a country with over 300 million people. This wasn't the result of scabbing by workers. In almost every struggle, union members have stood firm. UPS strikers fought back and won in 1997. Wisconsin workers and their supporters seized the state capitol in Madison. We haven't been defeated on the battlefield. The capitalist class, through its ownership of the means of production, used the scientific technological revolution to take away so many of our battlefields away. Thousands of strongholds of our class in basic industry and transportation have been destroyed. This deliberate deindustrialization has been aimed at black workers. Big capital wanted to end their dependence on black labor. 40 years ago, a quarter of the workers in the steel mills and auto plants were African Americans. Comrade Sam Marcy wrote about this capitalist agenda 30 years ago in a remarkable article entitled "Lynch Law in Buffalo, From the Erie Canal to the St. Lawrence Seaway." It was written in 1980 after 6 black men were lynched in Buffalo. 2 of these victims were cab drivers who had their hearts cut out. Comrade Johnny Stevens was driving a cab in Buffalo the night that one of these drivers was killed. The ruling class now looks at the black population differently, Sam wrote, than it did in the days of the Underground Railroad, when it saw the anti-slavery struggle as a source of cheap labor. It now dares look upon black workers in particular as a surplus population, along with white workers and the unemployed. It looks upon them with disdain, as a drain on their government budget, as a drain on their system, and as a dangerous source of social convulsions. Yet black workers continue to be the black backbone of the labor movement. They've been joined by millions of Latin, Asian, and immigrant workers who've revived May Day in the country where the holiday was born. High tech is a cesspool of discrimination. Steve Jobs refused to reveal how many black and Latin workers he employed because there were so few of them. In 1999, just 7% of the workers in Silicon Valley were Latin, while only 4% were black. GM and Ford haven't forgotten how black workers shook their plants in the 1960s and 70s. German and Japanese competitors know the story too. The highest organizational expression of the black liberation struggle was the Black Panther Party and the League of Revolutionary Black Workers in Detroit. Big Capital's answer was to build virtually all the new auto plants away from large concentrations of black workers. This has been the case since GM opened its Lordstown plant, Ohio plant in 1968. 30 years ago, racist Reagan broke the PATCO strike of air traffic controllers. AFL-CIO President Lane Kirkland did nothing. But the layoffs at Chrysler were worse. It was the conscious elimination of a predominantly black workforce that was the vanguard of the U.S. working class. This was shown in July 24th, 1979, when 2 black workers, Larry Carter and Isaac Shorter, turned off the power at the Jefferson Avenue Assembly plant in Detroit. It was the first big sit-down strike in 36 years. As Jerry Goldberg pointed out in Workers' World newspaper, Chrysler got rid of 35,000 workers in Detroit alone. From 1979 to 1982, the percentage of black workers went from 70% to 30%. The capitalist class economically destroyed Detroit, just as it later let black people drown and starve in New Orleans. The wholesale destruction of heavy industry in the Midwest caused the median income of African Americans to drop by 36% between 1978 and 1982. A reverse migration began back to the South. The firing of hundreds of thousands of black workers in auto, steel, and other unionized occupation has gone hand in hand with their wholesale incarceration. The 2.3 million prisoners in the United States are workers too. The strike at the Pelican Bay concentration camp is a working class struggle that should be supported by the labor movement. The racist character of capitalist development can be seen in Wisconsin. Between 1977 and 1992, that is before NAFTA, 55,000 manufacturing jobs were destroyed in multinational Milwaukee County. But the rest of the state, which with a few exceptions is overwhelmingly white, gained 66,000 of these factory jobs. Today in Wisconsin, 1 out of every 25 African Americans is in jail. The answer to oppression is revolution. New struggles, like the occupation of Wall Street, will break out. Nearly 1.5 million workers are now concentrated in Walmart stores and warehouses. We'll organize them just like auto and steel was organized in the 1930s. Cutting Social Security and Medicare will not be tolerated by the masses. The jobless will fight before they starve. A great upsurge of our multinational class is bound to take place. We have to win people over to see that a socialist revolution is the only solution.